case study in this video. Now, this was a assignment sent to members of our ongoing bootcamp to test their skills and knowledge learned during the previous session, which is on data cleaning. Now, I'll be walking through a simple solution on how we can get this data cleaned. Now, the first thing you need to do, looking at your data, you need to first identify the problems which you see in the data. Now, we have the data sheet, which the essential of the data sheet is to make it look clean at the end of the day and also create a date table, a separate date table based on key information. Then we also have data for 2013 and 2014. And what we are meant to do for this 2013 and 2014 is to join this data together, like we are meant to combine this data together. So how can we do this easily in Power Query? Now, for the first one, which is the dirty data, looking at the data, and if you've not watched the previous video, I highly recommend you watching the data prep with Power BI previous video which we did. How can we go ahead to clean this data? You need to first identify what is wrong with the data, and there were certain key things you need to look out for, which indicates your data is not at the best stage. For example, you have empty columns, you have empty rows, you don't have one single row of heading, your data not in a single column. Every unique data should have its own category. So based on those rules, you need to check what are the simple things we should see. Now, scrolling through the data, I can see we have empty columns here, and scrolling them just come to the end. I can see we also have some empty rows here because some empty values here. They are not doing anything to our data. Now, one other thing I'm seeing in this data is I can see the various, I think these are supposed to be technically column headers, right? Because this is talking about segments, country, this is talking about the product, cost, discounts, units sold. If you remember, part of our rules say every unique data should have its own category. So we need to be able to flip this data in a situation where we have our rows to act as our column, and the function that can what can allow us to do that in Power Query is transpose data. Now, without wasting much of our time, let's get right into it. Now, I have a Power BI file here. I have a blank Power BI report file here. I'm just going to open a blank report. Now that I've opened the blank report, just get rid of this. So the very first step you have to do is we first have to bring this data in. So what do we do to bring the data in? You come to get data. Now the data is in an Excel workbook. I'm going to specify Excel workbook. Now that I've identified the data as an Excel workbook, I just need to select the file, which is the CDHQ assignment, and I'm going to click on open. So that's just loading right up. Now the moment that's done, it should show me the Power Query pop up. That's to select my query. Yeah, so it's showing me to select my query. Now, if you remember in the previous video, I said there are three things you can connect to when you're bringing data from an Excel workbook. You can connect to either the sheets, the worksheets, a table or a named range. Now, most of the time, it's best to connect to tables because tables are more structured format. But there are some use cases now you have to connect to the sheets. Connecting to the tables directly may not give you, especially when there are no tables, you use the sheets. Now, for this 2013 and 2014 data, lucky the data is in a table, so we can easily select the table for this, that D 2013, 2014. Now, you can see there's the 2013 record and 2014 record. This is the sheet name. Since our data is a structured format, it's already in the table format, so I don't need to select, and it's already, we made it a table. I don't need to select the sheets for this. And I can just select the data sheets, and I'm going to click on transform, not load data, but transform data. Now, transform data, we open the Power Query editor interface. And if you see, it's showing a pop-up detecting automatic transformation. So it's going to try to process the queries to try and do those promoted headers and change type steps for us. But when we have the Power Query editor interface, we can go ahead to probably delete some of the steps because it's not all the steps that may apply to our use case scenario. So we have a cleaner record. Yeah, so that's once it has finished loading, once it's done loading, it will show the Power Query editor interface. And once I'm in the Power Query editor interface, I can go ahead to start doing some transformation. Yeah, so we're going to start with the dirty sheets. The dirty sheet to try to make it clean. Then we are going to try to append 2013 and 2014 sheet data together. Now, for this dirty sheet, I'm going to come to this promoted header step. Right click and do delete until the end. So that get rid of the those unnecessary step. Now, the moment I've deleted that promoted header step, if you remember, one thing we want to do is transpose we can transpose the data, like we can flip our rows to column or vice versa. So I'm going to click on transform, then transpose. So this flips our data from row to column. Now, once our data is in this format, it's starting to make a lot more sense. If we scroll down, we can see we have one empty row. The entire row is empty. You can see here we have one empty row, and that row is not doing anything to our data. The entire row is empty. We are going to get rid of the row by clicking on this drop down. So we're going to filter out that row. So I can just click on OK. So that's gotten rid of that empty row. Now, now to get rid of the empty columns that we don't need, what we are just going to do, I prefer using choose column because choose columns allows us to select the columns we need rather than selecting columns we don't need. So I'm just going to click on this drop down and click on choose columns. Now it's important to note that all these are still Power Query basics. There are a lot more ways you can achieve some of this in a more dynamic fashion using list in Power Query. Um, List in Power Query, but this is me showing you using the normal graphical user interface as well. So before I do that, first thing first is I have to use this first rules I said that. So I have to make all my rules, my top rules as headers. So that way when I click on select rules, it makes a lot of sense. So now we have segment and countries as headers. Now I'm going to come to choose. It's important to delete the change type step because sometimes it doesn't give you the accurate type. So you delete the change type step, and at the end of the day, you apply your transformation. Now I'm going to click on choose columns and select the columns that I want to leave and get rid of all other columns. So I'm going to deselect all. Select, okay, I'm going to select all, deselect the column one, column two. And like I said, there's a more dynamic way to do this, like using list, using mQuery, but this is still Power Query basics. So I'm going to do this and I'm going to deselect all the column one, column two, and I'm going to click on OK. So this way it will remove all those other column and only just keep these columns here. Now, if you click on this top down, you can see the formula which was written at the back end, which is the M query. So what we are just doing is select month, name, year, and it's selecting these particular columns that we want. And Power Query will automatically select them all every single time. Now we're almost basically done. The last thing we need to do is select the data type. So I'm just going to come to here to this point. Using my shift key, I can right click on change type and change this to all these are text. So they can all serve as text. This is a decimal number. Or this unit sold. So we can technically leave unit sold as the well, okay, in this case we have decimal, so we can still leave it as a decimal number. Sometimes you want to consider maybe using your unit sold as a whole number. Manufacture price, we can leave this as a whole number. Same goes for sales price. We can use this as a whole number. Then gross sales, we can have this as a decimal number or fixed decimal. Fixed decimal, the difference between two is fixed decimal, you have specifying like a currency. Discounts can be a whole number because we know this is more or less like it, it could be whole number. The normal sales, we could have this as a decimal number as well. Cost of goods sold, we could have as yeah, we could have this as a whole number. Profits, we could have this as a decimal number. Okay, cost of goods sold, I'm going to change this to decimal. So it's possible we could have some decimal. So under this type here, I'm just going to come here and copy this. So I'm just showing us how we can edit the M query, and I can come here and change this. So if I do that, The moment I just click on this mark, it should update that cost of goods sold will become a decimal number, not a whole number. So I'm just showing us how we can edit it also in the query. Now, date should be a date type, a date data type, and month number can be a whole number. This can be a text, and the last one, yeah, we can have year as as a whole number. Now, this we're basically done. We can call this public clean. Now, one other thing we may want to do is I'm going to show us how we can duplicate a query. And also, if for some reason we want to have a separate date, a calendar table, rather than having a date, month, number, month, name, year, all in this single table, let's have a calendar table which we are going to join to our date table when we create relationship. And that will take us to the next important topic, which is creating relationship and data modeling in or dimensional modeling in Power BI. But I'm just going to show us real quick. I can right click and I can duplicate this query. Now, instead of clean, I'm going to call this dates or calendar. Let me just use calendar. And I'm going to go to choose columns and select just the dates, month number, month name. Yeah. Now for this dates, if I want to have it as a dimension, and yeah, this takes us to facts and dimension, which, like I said, in the subsequent video, I'm going to explain it more. But you want to have this your dates to be unique. You don't want duplicate dates records. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to remove duplicate. So let's just have unique date periods, not duplicates, right? And once I have this, now these dates, I can probably split it into, I can split this date into months, and so we have month and year. Can even under the add columns, I can come to dates and add other attributes of dates. So which is the start of the year, end of the year, day name, day number, and vice versa. But so this is just showing us what more we can do with this. Now for this D 2013 and D 2014, if we want a situation where we combine this information in the sense that for this year, right now, this year is only showing us information about 2014, and the same for D 2013 is only showing us information about 2013. But I want a situation where I can have the information for 2013 and 2014 all in the same query. You can. So I want a situation where I'll be able to combine the information for 2013 and 2014 in the same table. Now we can use append for it. Now you can either append queries into a single query or you can append queries as a new query. What do I mean by that? If I want to combine 2013 information all into 2014 information, that this 2014 information will contain 2013 and 2014 data, I can use normal append queries. But if I want to append it so that I create a new query for me, not using 2010. Create a new query for me so I can still be able to see this 2013 and 2014 data. I can use append queries as new. And what append will do is going to copy the information from 2013, paste it under the information of 2014. So it's basically copying and pasting the information together. Now, one key thing to note is that the column headers for the base scenario for append queries should be the same. So all the column headers are the same. So it's very, very useful when you need to combine probably yearly information uh, that are on different worksheets that have the same structure together. So, for example, you have 2013 record, 2014 record. It could also be monthly, February, January, March, April. Now, another something which is good to note, which will be shown now, probably in the subsequent video, is if you have a Excel file in different Excel files in different workbooks, you can combine them all together using Power Query if they share the same structure as well. So for this append queries as new, see, I'm going to select two tables. You have your first table, and I can specify the second table I want to append. So I'm going to select D2013. Now, if I want to append three or more, I can select it, but I only need to append two, and I can click on OK. Now, once I have done that, I've combined those two information. And if I scroll to this left, under this year, if I click on the drop down for year, you can see the drop down from year is 2013 and 2014. And I can call this combined results. So that's simply how you could do append queries and clean data in Power Query. Now, in the next video, I'm going to be showing us how we can start to create relationships with our data in Power Query. Now, it's important to know for this clean data, since we already have the information in this calendar, I can get rid of the the month and the year. And this is going to introduce us to a concept called granularity, which will be explained in the subsequent video on the whole concept of dimensional modeling, having your fact and your dimension tables together. I'm going to remove these columns. I don't need these columns here. And I'm just going to click on close and apply. The moment I've clicked on close and apply, it's going to close and load this data for me Power into Power BI. So click on apply changes.